Welcome to our channel, Behind My Story. Please like, share, and subscribe.
There are all kinds of mistakes. Some are forgiven, some are forgotten. Some are borne by others, and some you pay for all the days of your life. These mistakes dog you relentless, even in your dreams. I've made mistakes in my lifetime, and I paid dearly for them. My name is Patricia. I am 19 years old, and I don't think I'm arrogant. I do think that I'm the most beautiful girl in my neighborhood. I live with my parents and twin brothers. Many boys in the neighborhood want to date me. My mom always encouraged me to think independently and to ignore other people's opinions. She told me to do whatever I wanted. Father was quite the opposite. He was always admonishing me to watch my behavior and behave myself. But I preferred my mother's advice, to be free and act on my own. My friends were like me. We were carefree and impulsive. We made bets about boys and love. We would flirt with boys and choose our victims and then cheat on them at the end to turn the tables on them. Playing frivolously with people's feelings was a bad thing, but I enjoyed it in a cruel sort of way. It thrilled and empowered me. But things changed when a guy named Jack saved my life one day. I was walking down the street alone while listening to music when a speeding car almost ran me down because I wasn't paying attention to where I was walking. Jack appeared from nowhere and pulled me out of harm's way and rescued me. He asked me if I was okay, and I said I was. He offered to drive me home, and I accepted. We didn't say a word during the drive. When we arrived home, I wrote my phone number on a piece of paper, along with a note telling him to call me in 2 hours. He did, and we talked until daylight. Jack was handsome, with brown eyes and well-tanned skin. He was a courageous man who protected me and helped me achieve all my dreams while we were together. If anyone annoyed me, I would go to him and he would embrace me in his arms to calm me. I felt safe whenever I was with him. We got engaged, had a small wedding with families and friends, and began enjoying our new life together. But my friends grew jealous of my newfound happiness, and they didn't like Jack. They thought that I deserved a better man. In the beginning, I tried to ignore their sniping at Jack, but I ended up being negatively biased towards Jack and began unintentionally sabotaging our relationship. I accused him of blocking me from achieving my dreams and of not caring about me. He promised me that after his graduation, he would find a job. I didn't believe him and asked to break off our engagement. He begged me not to and cried. But I had made my decision. I was torn between his love and my friend's jealousy and envy. I ended up losing him. Then I met Mark, a funny, blonde, rich guy with a nice car. Many girls wanted to marry him, but I pursued him and beat them all. I sensed that he didn't seem to care as deeply for me as Jack had, and that he didn't care about my safety as much either, but I dismissed my intuition. After all, he bought me anything I desired. So we decided to marry. Still, a little voice in my head kept whispering to me that I was making a big mistake by marrying Mark. After our marriage, we lived in a big villa with a swimming pool and lots of servants. But Mark changed after a while. He became irrational and paranoid. He began controlling everything in my life, even my lifestyle and my behavior. He raged a lot. Finally, I told him that I was fed up with his behavior, and that I didn't like being controlled by him like a dog on a leash. He sneered that he owned me because he gave me all his money to spend. I stopped making love to him, so he began raping me when the mood struck him. This made me miss Jack and his deep love for me. I cried a lot during our now miserable relationship. I was so distraught that I went to see a doctor with one of my friends. After checking me over, the doctor told me that I was pregnant. I was torn between joy and sadness. When I told Mark about my pregnancy and situation, he told me that we were still young and that I should abort the baby. And he threatened me, said if I didn't get an abortion, then he would do it himself. I furtively collected all my things one night and ran away to another state. I didn't know how to start over. I stayed in a motel for a while and worked in a restaurant as a waitress. I agonized a lot during my pregnancy about whether to have the baby or not. I had a kind colleague named Veronica, and I told her my story. She sympathized with me and asked me to come live with her. One day, I had a strong stomach pain in my 7th month of pregnancy, and she took me to the hospital. I was surprised to find that the birthing assistant was none other than Jack himself. We looked at each other silently for a moment. Then he asked me about my life, and I cried and asked him to help me. I saw the love in his eyes, and he told me that he would do his best to help me and the baby. Before the surgery, I held his arm and asked him to forgive me. He shushed me to be silent and confessed that he still loved me. I cried like a baby. He hugged me and made me feel warm and safe. His loving smile was the last thing I remembered before going under the anesthesia. I woke up in a room full of flowers with my Veronica smiling beside me. Jack knocked on the door and entered with a nurse in tow behind him. She was holding my baby, and they congratulated me for having a beautiful little girl. After that, he visited me every day at the hospital. I told him everything about my miserable life. He offered to let me live with him and promised to take care of me and the baby. I felt that my life was finally on the right track, and that life would forgive all my many mistakes. I even forgot my miserable past. But unfortunately, cruel life was finished with me yet. One day, I received a letter from Mark threatening me, saying that I would pay for running away from him. I immediately told Jack, and he reassured me and told me not to be afraid, that he would protect me with his life. Soon afterwards, my fears came true when the doorbell rang, and Jack opened the door to find Mark pointing a gun at him. Mark said coldly, "Do you imagine that you could take Patricia away from me? You can't." And then he laughed and pointed the gun toward me. I screamed and closed my eyes. When I opened my eyes again, I saw Jack standing in front of me, with blood gushing from his chest. He had told me that he would protect me with his life, and he did. I rushed over to Mark. We struggled. The gun went off, and Mark fell to the floor, dead. I'm sitting in my prison cell. I had lost everything: my life, my love, and ultimately my daughter. Life had exacted a high payment from me for making too many mistakes in my life.
I believe in the metaphysical world and that there are many mysteries that we don't understand yet, like souls, ghosts, and black magic. Are there really evil spirits who wish to do us harm? Well, I may have an answer for you. My name is Ralph, and I am 15 years old. My life became a journey to study the metaphysical world. My parents always told me that reading books about the supernatural world would mess with my mind, but I didn't care. My friends share my interest in the occult. I remember the first time we tried to summon a spirit. We drew a pentagram on the floor and placed black candles at the points of the star in preparation for the ceremony. After the ceremony started, we waited for a spirit to appear, but all we summoned was a small rat. Even so, we were afraid of rats, so it was still a scary experience for us, but not in the way we expected. In our second experiment, we tried to summon the soul of a girl named Mary. Although it was a fun ritual, not much happened. The power went out and we reclosed a breaker and the lights came back on. Then, we heard the voice of a small girl crying and the voice of some woman saying, "No one can get into my forbidden area." We all screamed and ran away, but then we learned later that this was just the TV that we had heard. But that doesn't mean that supernatural events never happen. Don't forget that. In our third experiment, we tried to communicate with creatures from the planet Uranus by sneaking into a clinic that belonged to a friend's father and connecting an electrocardiograph machine to a girl's hands and feet. I thought she was going to die, but she recovered. Now, you may say that I'm experiencing hallucinations and that all our failed attempts could be explained away by normal phenomena. But what I am going to tell you may make you change your mind and your notions about the afterlife. On Independence Day, we were traveling up north to visit our aunt. Along the way, we stopped at a gas station next to a gypsy camp. The gypsies were gyrating in some kind of wild dance to the rhythm of tambourines, as if they were doing some macabre ritual of black magic and voodoo. At least that's what it looked like to me. I thought it was cool and imagined myself living the life of a carefree gypsy. Among them was a woman with tattoos all over her body. As we pulled into the gas station, she was staring at me intently, and I felt strange, as if her gaze had affected me in some way. After stopping at the gas station, Dad and I got out of the car, and I was surprised when the tattooed gypsy woman approached me and presented me with a cute black cat in a small metal cage. I knew that superstitious people feared black cats and believed them to be omens of bad luck, but personally I disagreed with them. Cats are cats, regardless of the color of their fur. I thought she was trying to sell it to me and asked her how much it cost. She told me that it was a present given to me for free. I thanked her and she turned and left. Dad finished filling up the car's gas tank and we drove away. My parents were surprised when they saw that I had magically gained a black cat in a cage, so I explained what had happened with the gypsy woman. Dad didn't like the cat's black color. He said it looked so dour and gloomy. Just as Dad said that, the cat turned its head towards Dad and hissed at him, as if he took offense at the comment about his fur. When we got home, I opened the cage and let the cat out. It walked around the flat and seemed to be looking for something. Mice, probably. I made it a cozy bed from a blanket and gave it some food. We played together for a bit. Though I had thought it cute before, its movements and features started to strike me as predatory or hostile in some way. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I shrugged it off, thinking that we'll get used to each other in a few days. Later, I began noticing that it had a quirky knack for disappearing and reappearing, as if by magic. At times, I would hear the cat meow as if it were glaring at something. But when I would try to see what it was looking at, there was nothing there. One evening, after visiting a friend, I went home and wanted to get some sleep. Normally, the cat would sleep beside me, but on this particular day, I couldn't find it anywhere. Suddenly, the power and lights went out, and all I could see was darkness. I heard something moving along the wall. I scrabbled around and found a flashlight and shined around. There was the cat. Its reflective eyes shined white, and its canine teeth loomed large like tiger fangs. Big and conspicuous, and ready to bite into something juicy. It was glaring at me as if I were that juicy something, but I yelled at it, and it retreated. My parents had come to see what was going on, so I pointed at Sparky. I had named the cat Sparky, and told them that Sparky seemed like he wanted to attack me. But they paid me no heed. Later that night, I was trying to go to sleep when I suddenly noticed that Sparky was lying right next to me. I broke out in a cold sweat. When I told my parents about Sparky's magical appearance at my bedside, they told me that I was just sleep deprived and that I would feel better after getting some sleep. I finally got to sleep and dreamed that I was in a dark house shining a flashlight around and that Sparky was getting ready to attack me again. I woke up with a start and found Sparky sleeping next to me. I told Mom about my nightmare, but she brushed it off as a bad dream or indigestion from dinner. Then one day, my parents had to visit one of our relatives, and so left me home alone with Sparky. I was really nervous. I tried to find Sparky, intending to return it to that darn gypsy woman, but it pulled its disappearing act again and couldn't be found. That night, my parents were outside when the lights went out again. Again, I heard a sound. Shined the light, saw Sparky with the white eyes and large fangs glaring at me as if ready to pounce on me and attack. Deja vu. I must have fainted because later I woke up to find my parents standing beside me, shaking me to wake me up. They looked worried. I told them about Sparky in the dark, ready to attack again. I asked where Sparky was, but they didn't know. We searched for it everywhere, but couldn't find it. After that day, I began feeling better. Had I been dreaming? Had I been hallucinating? Was it just my imagination? Was Mom right about my books on the supernatural messing with my mind? Sitting, I sighed and dropped my hand to my side. It fell upon something warm and fuzzy. Sparky was there.
My name is Jerry. I am the village dreamer who touched the poor suffering in pain. In my country, illness is a monster that eats its victim's soul without mercy. I decided to be the soul saver, or the savior of souls. Heroes in my country don't wear superhero costumes. Rather, they wear white lab coats with stethoscopes hanging around their necks. I knew how difficult it was to become a doctor, but I was up for the challenge, so I enrolled in a medical college. The studies were challenging, but my creed in life is this: an opportunity may only come around once. You must take it or leave it. After graduation, I was hired to work in a government hospital in my village. Unfortunately, I discovered early on that my knowledge level wasn't broad enough, so I traveled to England to expand my knowledge base. I wanted to take advantage of the experience of the professional doctors there, so I attended difficult surgeries and observed and studied them intently. My mind was like a sponge, absorbing vast amounts of empirical data. Even so, I still wasn't satisfied with my knowledge level, so I traveled to the USA. When I arrived in Chicago, I felt like a thirsty man who had an oasis in the desert. I encountered advanced technologies, modern, new medical equipment, leading-edge ways of treating heart disease, serious heart disease cases, and fantastic anecdotal stories from famous doctors about their most unusual cases. I dreamed of being a great doctor like them, and my opportunity came when a baby girl was diagnosed with a serious heart illness. She was not expected to live long, so I volunteered to perform some risky surgery on her. All the doctors around me thought I was crazy, but I knew that I could do it. After 5 hours of arduous concentration, focus, stress, and sweating under the operating room lamps, the surgery concluded successfully. I had proven myself to be a great doctor after all. Afterwards and subsequent surgeries, I became known as the guardian angel who saved souls. I gathered a huge following due to my successes. I was surprised when my surgery techniques later became required studies in my country. I became a role model for many aspiring medical students. I returned home to thank my country by building a heart hospital that treated people for free. Many people donated to my cause. My hospital saved many souls, but this is a never-ending mission. My country bestowed upon me the honorable title of the Prince of Hearts. Will you donate to my cause?